Good afternoon. Welcome to Culture Coast. The intro you just heard was by Al Musitano, and today we're interviewing Tancey Buscher, who has a umbrella company called Buscher Consultants, where she deals with helping authors write, publish, and market their books. She also has Tangerine Jelly Bean. They publish children's books. Okay, hi Nancy. It's nice to have you on today.
Hi, Donna.
Okay, when did you first start writing?
Oh my, I've been writing probably 20 years.
And has it always been children's books?
No.
When did you start doing that?
I moved to Florida in 98, and my mother had just passed away, and both my parents were then gone, and I took her house in Florida. So that's what brought me to Florida. I decided I had never written or illustrated, but I'd always wanted to. So I moved here with the intention of writing and illustrating children's books.
Had you ever, what kind of art did you have before that? What kind of lessons?
I was just a dabbler. Oh, I took an oil painting class a few times. I did things like I created banners for the church one year. They got a banner a month.
But you had a dream that you wanted to be an illustrator.
It's more of a nagging undertow.
A passion that was hiding in there that needed to be, and you said, okay, this is my chance.
Well, yeah. When I lived in Charleston for about 12 years, South Carolina, the Charleston. While I was there, I wrote advertising for other people. I wrote plays and screenplays. One of my plays was it was produced for Piccolo Spoleto, Charleston's annual art festival. And that same year, the Raggedy Balloon Man won a national competition in which 12 playwrights were chosen to go to Beaufort, South Carolina for a week, and they were paid. The whole idea was to listen to people who were in the business and develop the play. Well, of course, my play was for children. It was interesting because the first day you had a cold reading. Then the last day you had a staged reading. Well, the people who auditioned for my play loved the play so much that when we had the staged reading, they all came in costume. It was amazing. And I said to one of them, I said, I have a little theme song that goes with this. And he goes, oh. And I'm thinking, how are we going to handle the sound and everything for a staged reading? And he said, well, let me listen to it. He sang it a cappella. It was wonderful. So that was a good time. And then it was shortly after that I moved here.
So you had that under your belt, and you had a dream in your mind that you were heading in this direction.
Right.
In addition to taking over your mom's place.
Probably in the late 70s, because my husband died in 78. It was maybe 5 or 6 years later that I decided I really did want to write. And so I didn't know what to write. And I started out writing poetry, and I wrote greeting card captions. Oh, yeah, anything.
Did you work for Hallmark or any of those?
No.
None of them?
Mostly what I did was send things out and received rejections.
The life of a writer.
Isn't that the truth? Oh, my gosh.
Rejections are middle name. We have to get tough skins. Absolutely.
During that time, and it must have been in Charleston, I wrote 6. They weren't really books. They were booklets. Maybe 6 pages. Well, to do any
play or screenplay, you have to have it short. 90 pages is all they're allowed to be.
Oh, well, so I think I tried about everything. When I moved to Florida and decided to write for children, suddenly it occurred to me that I had never written anything that required punctuation. Because in screenplays, you don't even need to complete sentences.
Yeah, they have a certain format, period.
Exactly, and they're all different.
So you had children's books you were writing, but you weren't sure if you were punctuated right? So what did you do?
The punctuation was one of my concerns. The first thing I did was I contacted Island Village Montessori School in Venice. I said, I'd like to come work for you. And they said, well, come on. So I became a writing specialist. What that means once a week you take over the class and you teach them your subject. My subject was teaching these children creative writing, and it was kindergarten through 3rd grade. What it did for me was it taught me what children are capable of doing, reading, also what they like to read.
A little bit of their thought process.
Exactly. And the thing about kindergarten to third grade, I mean, oh my gosh, you're going from children, most of them don't even know the alphabet yet, all the way to the more advanced ones that are reading Harry Potter. So it was a wonderful experience, and I loved it. They came to me at the end of whatever period of time this was. They did a review, and it was just, oh my gosh, oh, Nancy, this is good and that is good, and we really appreciate what you're doing here, but we can't hire you back. You don't have a degree. So I said, okay, and they said, why don't you go back to school? So I talked to Carol Faber. Carol Faber recommended Eckerd College, and so in 2006 I went back to college. You talk about living your worst nightmare. Oh my God, I was terrified.
It wasn't that hard, was it?
Oh, well, I don't know, because, I was blind the first 2 or 3 years. What I did was, they have this one class that everybody is obligated to take. And I realize now that that's because if you're not really into the whole college thing, you'll get scared and leave. And so we started out with a class of 32 and ended up with 8.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people not making
Dropping out, right.
Now, were these all adults that were already living?
Yes.
This was an
Yes.
adult education college?
Yes. Eckerd has their Pell program, and it's for people who are coming back to college after a long period of time. So the majority of people, I think the youngest one I ever ran across was like 28, but the majority of them are more advanced. The oldest one was in her 80s. But
so did you get your degree so you could go teach the kids again?
I graduated with honors.
Cool.
Yes.
And did you go teach the kids again?
They weren't hiring. No, because in the meantime, I graduated in 2010, but in the meantime, the economy had tanked. It was a whole different world.
Oh,
so
horrible. It was horrible.
I thought, well, you know what? This is the perfect time to go to Scotland, because I wanted to go to Scotland and get my master's at the Edinburgh College of Art.
Seriously?
Seriously.
Wow.
And I had the money saved. I had the
Huge
grades. I could go. There was nothing to hold me back. I sent my application, and they didn't accept me.
Oh, no.
And I'm going, why didn't they accept me? I don't understand that. And not wanting to be the ugly American, I thought, well, I'll just go over and find out. So I went over, and I got there just in time for their senior exhibit. Oh my gosh, it was fabulous. It was in 2 buildings over 3 floors. And I had no clue that there were so many fields of art out there. But they do everything. They do everything. They do animation. They do landscape architecture. They do what I'm going to be interviewing people to do. Because now that I know how many fields of art there are, Artist Kaleidoscope is a perfect venue for these people to come and give their message to the world.
Right, and you're absolutely right, because I've interviewed people for Culture Coast, which is also an artist radio show, artists and musicians. Musicians are artists.
Yes.
Writers are artists. They're the literary arts. Chefs are culinary arts. It just goes on. And like you said, landscape art is amazing. It's one of the things we showcase in the village. You know, we have the garden walk. And art. Yes, there's so many ways to express your art. Nora Roberts, the writer, major famous writer, she says that creativity and magic are everywhere around us, but she loves gardening. She has award-winning gardens that she's done herself, because that's how she does her downtime. She creates things. And a lot of writers you've seen have books, and they include recipes in them. Why?
Yeah.
Because they love to cook.
Yeah.
They write, but they love to create other things. So there's just so many avenues. You're absolutely right.
I love the way artists, and when I say artists, I mean writers as well, but how they are so multifaceted. And I know with some of us, it's hard to pinpoint. I've already interviewed some people who, I'll say, okay, I know you're a singer, I know you're a writer, I know you're an artist, but this show's just going to concentrate on your artwork right now.
And it never stays
there. And then we've got 2 more shows coming up down the road.
But it never stays there either.
You can mention, but not focus.
It's just so all-encompassing. It's who they are. It's all central to who they are. So it's really amazing. Creatives are very creative.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what you want to call them almost, because artist seems almost too focused. They're creatives, and they create, whether it's advertising or whether it's cars, designing a car, designing a building. My gosh, architects are definitely artists. There's no way about it.
Well, and the new up-and-coming ones are like nail artists, tattoo artists, although they use they use helpers. But you know what? I used to think that to be an artist, a real artist, you had to put your canvas up there, take your brush, and paint it, and it came out perfect the first time. Now I realize even the masters, they would go to a show where their work was being exhibited, and they'd still be touching it up, making changes.
And we do that with our writing, too.
Oh,
when is it done?
Exactly.
When is it done? And you keep going back, and even after it's published, you're like, oh, but this would have sounded so much better if I just used this sentence instead.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're always trying to make it better, but at some point you have to say it's good enough.
Yeah.
And that includes all the arts. So, you've got TangerineJellybean.com.
Tangerine Jelly Bean is the imprint for the children's picture books. The jelly beans represent the multicolored pieces that we intend to put out. TJ Press is for chapter books.
Okay, what is a chapter book for our audience?
A chapter book is the book that a child goes to when they move up from picture books. Chapter books have pictures in them, but they're not as many. The book can look a little bit more like a grown-up book, being black and white. It's not color.
Did Harry Potter have any illustrations on the chapter beginnings or anything like that? I don't recall.
You know what? I think it might have. I only read one, and I read it because I said, oh my God, this woman must be charismatic to have done so well. And after reading it, I thought, she's one darn good storyteller.
She is.
She is.
She just, and it blends together so well.
Yeah.
JK is definitely amazingly good. And I'm so glad she was found.
Oh,
because she was rejected just like the rest of us over and over and over. And
well, you know what happened?
And raspberries to all the people who rejected her, okay?
Yeah, I'm wondering.
And to all those who rejected you or I. Sorry, we're good people.
Yeah, she gave the book to one of the publishers, and he's just, he stuck it in his briefcase, took it home. His 8-year-old said, what are you doing, Daddy? And he said, oh, I'm looking at these. And she starts thumbing through, and she gets a hold of the Harry Potter. She comes back to him and says, how does it end? Because it's only a few chapters. And so that's what enticed him.
To find out. Yeah. And they're amazingly fat books for that age group that they were written to. At the time, that would automatically have gotten her rejections because they were far too big for those children to read.
Much too sophisticated.
Oh, that's too complicated. They don't want long books like that. You can't have more than 80,000 words. It's like, what?
My grandson was reading Harry Potter when he was 10. I think that's 4th grade.
It sounds about right.
But having been with a Montessori school, it gives you a whole different slant on life. I walked into that school and went into the kindergarten class, and there were 2 little girls laying on their tummies, working on a little rug, and they're subtracting 4 numbers from 4 numbers. And I said, oh my God, I love this school.
I know. I have a granddaughter. She's 4. I was absolutely amazed. Last week she came in and she was reading colors. She could read the color blue and green and red and yellow and white, and she recognized them and was able to read.
She had the comprehension as well.
She's not even in kindergarten yet, and she's already reading words, and it's like, oh my gosh, they're just little sponges. They take it all in and they retain it.
And they realized too, Marie Montessori, she was of course a doctor, but she knew that there are phases in a child's life where they show interest in something, and if you can feed that interest during that time, that child is hungry for it. This is how they advance.
And with the iPads and the iPhones nowadays, she's just a little one. And she's doing all the numbers, and they're reading books on their phones.
Yes.
It's such a huge market for us because as a children's writer, if they get a Kindle, they can read your books and see them in color, and it costs next to nothing.
And if they don't know the word, they touch the word.
And it tells them.
And
there's even audio that they're expecting to put into that soon. So can you imagine if they touch the word and they actually can hear how it's pronounced?
Yes.
And how much that's going to help kids learn to read even earlier than we. I was amazed. I think it was second grade before I read Jane and Jack fell down the hill and the run spot run. You know.
Oh, Dick and Jane.
Dick and Jane and the spot and all of that. That was second grade. Now they're coming into school and they can already read. It's just incredible.
Well, you know, it used to be when my son was in the first grade, they started teaching phonics. He'd come home and you'd hand him anything and he would just read away.
Sound it out.
Well, about 6 weeks later, all of a sudden his grades start dropping. And of course, this called for a meeting. And I said, how can this be? He outreads my daughters, his older sisters. She said, oh, well, we are now working on comprehension. Yeah, he was reading. He wasn't getting a thing out of it. He was just phonetically pronouncing what he was seeing there. This is heartbreaking for a child. The TJ that was 10 reading Dr. Seuss, reading Harry Potter, when he finished the first grade and he and his sister came and spent the summer with me, we went to the library. He said, I'm not a good reader, I'm not going to read. And I said, well, let's go see what we can find. Let's see what kind of a book we can find. Sit him down, and he said, oh, I'm not going to read. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll read a line, you read a line. No, I'm not going to read. So I read a line and I wait. I read 2 lines. Pretty soon he started in. We made it through the book. It was like pulling teeth. When we finished, I said, take the book to the librarian and tell her the story you just read. Oh my gosh, a few minutes later he comes back. He's waving this thing. Oh, Nana, look at this, look at this. I told her the story and she pulled out a box and it was full of toys and she said, just reach in and take anything you want. He said, I'm going to go find another book. So that summer, he read 79 books.
Wow.
Yeah. Because
so you have to catch them at the right time.
Exactly.
And not let them get that loss of confidence where they just won't read.
Yep. He read to his sister. When they went back to school, we had documented all this. Both of them won an award for having read the most books for the summer. She, because she had heard them. And so they took the kids to a baseball game. That was what they won.
Wow.
How about that? So
baseball game.
He was reading Harry Potter when he was 10. Now he's in Clemson. He's going to graduate at the end of the year with an engineering degree.
Very cool.
So help those kids read.
Yeah, read. And did you know that James Patterson was just in Bradenton last week?
No, was he?
Yes, he was. He was doing a book signing at his sister's fitness club.
Oh.
And I got to meet him and we took my stepson, and he went in, and James Patterson is really big on helping kids read. He's got a whole organization called Kids Read, and he really promotes children's readings. He's got the middle grade books, he's got the young adult books, but he's a really big proponent of younger people reading, because especially boys, I think, because they're rather neglected. The girls sometimes get picked up with the romances and the coming of age type stories and stuff. The boys don't have a whole lot of adventure stories anymore. In the old days, they had the cowboy books and the adventure stories and the space age stories. There's not that much out there for them anymore. The girls get witches books and all the zombies and the vampires and all the paranormal stuff, but the boys aren't really being written for as much as they were.
Yeah.
So that's one of the problems, is that the authors aren't writing for that particular group. Yeah. So it's good to see.
There's a faction, though, that are trying to get that turned around because they realize it.
Yeah, and James Patterson is one of the biggest of that group, and I'm so glad that there's somebody, he really pushes that. So it was really great having Luciano meet him. It was very cool. So you have you have also an adult imprint for adult books.
This is my first attempt in this direction. It's called Life is a Fork and Knife. What it is, it's all about handling stress. When my husband was 42, he died of an aneurysm, and the children were between 10 and 15, 4 of them. There was a lot of stress.
Were you a stay-at-home mom up until then?
No, actually, I was a decorator at that time.
Artistic?
I know.
Okay, so your husband died unexpectedly.
Yes.
Leaving you with 4 children to support.
Yes. About a year later, I bought into a boutique. I was just going to finance it. I realized that the woman who owned the boutique didn't have any marketing skills. She and her husband had started it. He was the marketer. She was the buyer and the seller.
The art person.
Yeah.
The designer.
And not the business head. And so before I invested any money, I said, you know what, I think we should be partners. And she said, okay. So It was shortly after that that I became worried about my husband's tool and die shop. We had put it on the market, and 3 people made an offer, but I mean, they were awful. One fellow was an alcoholic. Anyhow, I said no to all 3. And finally, I didn't know what else to do. I just went in and sat down at the desk and said, I'm here, teach me. I ran the tool and die shop for 7 years.
Without any experience in the business.
Without any experience. And you talk about
a learning experience.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I was between murder and suicide the whole time.
So there was a lot of stress.
In a man's world, my manager was a piece of work. He wouldn't give me all the information, and so I'm always walking around.
He was probably worried that he would lose his job if he knew how to do it.
Probably. I finally figured it out, because once I figured out how to read the books, I could see that everything was the same the previous year, but the profit was not there. So come to find out, what I did was my husband hadn't done this, and I guess they do it a lot, but I put a number on each job. When it was bid, when we bid on it, it got a number. If we won the bid, that number stayed with it. So if anybody worked on it, they put the number on it. Any materials that were purchased, the number was on it. And so there was no way for him to take any money after that. I ended up firing him. Oh my goodness.
So you had stress. So you wrote a book about how to handle stress. Now,
yes.
How do you tell people how to handle stress?
Well, I tell them in the very beginning, this book is not a doctoral thesis. This book is written by people who don't have debilitating depression. You go to a doctor for that. What this book is about is changing your perception can change your life. The book is full of
wonderful things.
It can be. It can be. Sometimes it can be a nightmare.
If you perceive yourself as being a loser, you're going to be a loser.
Exactly.
If you perceive yourself as being a success, damn good chance you'll be a success. And it's in how you perceive. Other people may perceive you as a failure, but if you perceive yourself as a success, do they really matter?
Right.
That's
what
important.
I did was I sent a letter out to a number of people I knew, and I said, so how do you deal with stress? And it was cute because one of them wrote me back and he said, sorry I'm so late getting back to you on this, but when I got your letter, it gave me stress. And he said, and then he went on to tell me how he deals with it. So you'll find these notes in the book. Again, this is a book, I say right on the outside, keep it with you in case you're held up in traffic, or when you're having quiet time in the tiny room in your house or away. That's a good time to pull the book out.
Sitting in the doctor's office.
Yeah.
Just waiting, and it's wasted time unless you use it somehow.
Right.
And yet, you don't want to use every minute. Sometimes just meditate. But
years ago, I was traveling quite a bit, and I used to keep a journal. But being the type A personality I am, I would have to come home, type out my handwritten notes, then I'd have to file it alphabetically in my library.
Okay, you might have been a little OCD too.
Maybe just a tad. And so I thought, well, you know what, I'm going to do sketches instead. So it's not fine art. It's just little line drawings. Sometimes it could be just the corner of a room. But anyway, I'm pulling all these out. And all of a sudden, I'm kind of hearing affirmations. And so in the book, what I've done is I have put the sketch in with the affirmation, then the date and where it was
very cool.
done.
Now, this is your first book with Treasure Fleet, correct?
Yes.
Now, are you going to be doing other people's books under the imprint Treasure Fleet that are adult books?
Do
they have to be inspirational? I
don't see myself doing that because, to tell you the truth, there's just not enough money in it for so many people.
Yeah.
I'd be more than happy to help them.
With the author services
with
that
the
you
author
offer.
services, right.
You'll offer, you have a whole group of associates that can help them with the different aspects of publishing themselves at reasonable prices versus the vanities.
Yeah.
If they go to a vanity, they have to buy a package. Sometimes they don't need everything in the package.
Right.
Other times, the packages are just astronomical and ridiculous. They don't cover half of what they say they do. Like, they'll throw in $2,000 for marketing, and all they do is tell you the names of some radio stations to call and do. It's just terrible.
And do your own thing.
Yeah, it's just, it's really, really bad. I hate seeing them get ripped off, which was why I started mine and why you've started yours. You're down here in the South, I'm up in Manatee, and it's something that's needed, and writers need to have
Well, I think
that
that's
connection. ABC, just real quickly
I was
wanted to
gonna
mention
mention that.
ABC. You're the president.
I met Brenda Spalding at book fair one time. She and I got to talking, and she said, "Oh yeah, I've been trying to reach people. I'm always calling, seeing where we might have an opportunity to sell books and things. I have a number of people on my list." And I said, "Oh, you started a database. You know what? Maybe we should work together." And so what we did was we formed ABC, Artisans of Books for Children. It was for children because at the time, everybody we knew were children's writers.
And they were needed. You needed
Oh,
a
yeah.
children's book writers
There
group.
was no venue for them. The problem, and it wasn't really a problem, but we discovered within our first year that authors of mainstream books, of adult books, they were needing what we did too. Even though we are ABC.
And focused on children, it's not exclusive.
Yes, and it's no longer focused on children. I have a tendency just to call it ABC because it's so hard to explain to people the exception to this.
I think focusing on the children, though, isn't a bad thing because you are there's nobody else around that does that.
Well,
there's lots of other groups for the adults.
The thing is, though, our membership now is
grown.
pretty close to 50-50. It's not really fair to the others.
To only focus on the children.
Right. And unfortunately, we've already incorporated with the children name. And we've got this beautiful logo that Carol Stevens-Babisi did for us.
And it fits in there so well.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, it was really good having you on Culture Coast, and we will have to do it again later in the year and talk more about specifically certain books that you have illustrated.
Okay.
All right. So
Yes.
It'll be great having you back. Thank you for being on
Dona.
Culture Coast. Village Voices in downtown Bradenton, Florida, the largest artist colony in the state. 42 acres of artist homes, galleries, and restaurants feature handcrafted gifts, fine art sculptures, painting, enviro art, healing arts, mystics, and musical mayhem, lifting this once mediocre neighborhood into the crown jewel of the city of Bradenton. A few of the featured galleries are unique in their offerings. The Village of the Arts includes Village Voices, a book gallery for Florida authors only. The Village Mystic, offering all things metaphysical from meditation, massage, aromatherapy, mediums, psychics, shamans, Reiki healing, and much more. The Dancing Crane Gallery exhibits fine art and custom jewelry. 5 restaurants to please your palate offer everything from Sicilian delights, healthy gourmet salads, sandwiches, and specialties. And the newest edition offering rustic breads and New York exclusives created by Chef Jim Copening. Musicians abound playing everything, jazz, blues, folk, and rocks as you stroll the avenues enjoying the twinkling lights during the First Friday Art Walk. For more information, directions, or days and hours of operation, please visit their website at www.villageofthearts.com.